Good afternoon. Welcome to the July 18th, 2023 Economic Development Trust meeting. I'll now call the meeting to order. Item 2 on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 20th, 2023 Trust meeting. With any questions or comments? If not, we can take a motion. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. The item passes. Brings us to item 3 on the agenda, ratification of claims. We can take a motion. We have a motion and a second. All right, we'll move to items for individual consideration. Item 4A is a joint resolution renewing agreements of support in connection with debt obligations issued by OCEDT for fiscal year 2024. Mr. Sudol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our annual item that just renews those agreements of support where the city has backstopped OCEDT debt. This includes the bonds that were issued as part of the Devon TIF Project 180 project. This also the downtown TIF 2 had some financing, long-term financing that was done. Also, it includes the Convention Center, Omni hotel financing, and the First National financing. So all of these were obligations that the trust issued, and they're backed by the city. And the city, because it can't make promises more than a year, we have to come back each year and do this, just as a reminder. So it's a routine item we do every year.
Any questions for Mr. Sudol? If not, we can take a motion. We have a motion. And a second. Please vote. The item passes. Item 4B is a resolution rescinding the June 20th, 2023 allocation of $21,390 for film incentives with Defiant Vanity LLC. Ms. McSpadden?
Yes, good afternoon. Joanna McSpadden with the Finance Department. I might go ahead and talk about B and C, their companion items. So B rescinds your prior resolution appointing or approving the allocation, and C is kind of a correcting item, correcting the amount. And I'll let you know that there was a Scrivener's error in some of the data entry to the economic model that sort of changed that number, and it increased the allocation allowable for the project by about $4,500, and so we are recommending that we go ahead and increase that. And I will let you know the council has already approved this, so we kind of did this one a little bit backwards, and so this will be the final item on this project until we come back with their contract.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on either 4B or 4C? Yes.
Are there any issues relative to the SAG-AFTRA that would impact the project? Thank you.
All right, with that, we can take a motion on item 4B. We have a motion and a second. And the item passes. Brings us to item 4C, which is the joint resolution approving an allocation not to exceed $25,931 for film incentives with Defiant Vanity LLC that Ms. McSpadden just spoke about. With that, we can take a motion on that item as well. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. The item passes. Brings us to item 4D on the agenda, a joint resolution approving an allocation not to exceed $200 million in an ad valorem and $5.5 million in sales and use tax from Tax Increment District number C in support of the Boardwalk project. Mr. Sudol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm really excited to bring this forward, and just as a reminder, this has been a strategic, long process here that we started with amending the downtown TIF. There were some TIF amendments to do a carve-out on this site, and this is the site sometimes known as the Compress site, but it's the site that's a parking lot around to the west and north of the U-Haul building downtown. You know, a couple things, and I'm going to talk just very quickly about what the package is on this and talk about some of the reasons why I think we should move this forward. But then I'm going to introduce Scott Madison, the developer, to come up and give you more information and presentation on this. But again, this is an area that we have a TIF just for this project. You know, as we're working together to build our city and build OKC for the future, this is an exciting project that's going to change our skyline. It's to start first, what we're proposing is it would be providing 90% of the TIF on a pay-as-you-go basis. So if the project doesn't happen, the city has no financial risk to it. In addition, created in this area was also a sales tax TIF only for construction up to $5.5 million. So the 90% is on the ad valorem up to $200 million. The sales tax would be $5.5 million. It's the intent, I think, of the project to pursue potentially getting the Leverage Act with the state. But again, that's not something that we would do. A couple of other points. In your packet, the item mentions the project cost would be $550 million, but I wanted to point out this is really a $700 million plus project. The nuance with those numbers is there's a hotel included in this, the Dream Hotel project. Pursuant to the city's agreement with the Omni Corporation for the Convention Center Hotel several years ago, we have a no subsidy zone downtown. This is within there. So we cannot subsidize another hotel. This is actually the opposite. What we're proposing here is the ad valorem off the hotel would actually go to support the other projects. And so Scott's going to describe this, so I'm going to try not to steal too much of his thunder, but what's being proposed are 3 residential towers, over 900 apartments within those. There's a workforce component to that. There's over close to 60,000, I think it's about 59,000 square foot of retail, restaurant, entertainment, 2 public parking structures, and then the hotel, and there's some water features, other things inside, and Scott's going to go into that more in detail. I did want to say several things to make sure we're being transparent. Normally we don't get into these details till we get to the economic development agreement, but part of what we're contemplating and negotiating is the potential to allow the TIF incentive to be passed on to subsequent buyers, which is not something that's out of policy or against local law or anything, but it's just not been our practice. Typically, we usually have that when a property's flipped, that the TIF incentive ends. As you'll see in our presentation, the returns on this are really, really low, and it's one of the things that we're looking at providing the potential to pass that on. However, to protect the public interest and make sure that this is something that doesn't get overly enriched, part of what we'll be negotiating is putting a waterfall concept so that as pieces or all of this are sold in the future, that the city and the developer would participate in sharing the sale proceeds and the returns. These are things that would all come back in an economic development agreement, and we've been working on coming up with the points of that, and so I feel like I'm jumping the gun a little bit on that, but I just wanted to make sure, and I tried to be transparent with this in the TIF review committee, and wanted to be transparent with you all as well, that that's something we're considering. So a couple other quick words before I turn it over. Again, one of the reasons I would make a recommendation that we go in, which this is a very heavy TIF ask, but this is a really transformative project. And if you look back at the city's history, when we give high percentages of the TIF, it's typically been for very transformative things, whether it's been transformative tourism projects like Ocana, whether it's been transformative office and downtown projects like thinking about the Devon Tower and what it did, or the Omni, something that really supplemented a bigger strategic goal. this would be very transformative in the residential space and in the skyline and in really the nature of our city. And I think it's really exciting that Oklahoma City's reached this point where a project like this is even being talked about. And again, just as a reminder, one other point, the verticality and density is another reason I think it's important and that we incentivize this so heavily. This will be fitting $700 million of development on 4 acres. If you kind of think, putting that in perspective, we've had some wonderful projects. You know, one recently that just opened, like the Muse over here at 4th and Chartel. You know, that was about $55 million of investment on about 2.5 acres. So you start kind of extrapolating some of these things. You know, we may be able to develop this without as heavy of a TIF, but it's probably going to be something much, much lower, probably less than $100 million. So for me, looking at it, it's really an opportunity to fit, I mean, multiple times what we would normally do, the types of developments we've had here. Also, I want to point out it's a really large number, but this is a pay in, pay out, and it's really intended to help provide cash flow over time. If you present valued this back to today, you know, we're not providing this up front, but if you present valued the $200 million back to today, it's probably more like $90 million, which would be more like a 12, 13, 14% of the project. So, you know, that's another thing that oftentimes is apples to oranges when we talk about providing upfront money versus pay-as-you-go, you know, money. So with that, I just wanted to point out some of those things, kind of my mindset as we've been working on this for more than a year, bringing this forward. And with that, I'd like to bring up Scott Madison to the podium, and he's going to introduce his team and take you through a presentation on the project itself. And then we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kenny. My name is Scott Madison. I'm the president and CEO of Madison Capital and managing partner of the Boardwalk at Bricktown. I'm going to let my team kind of talk about the project today, but I want to give you a little background on who I am, so most of you don't know me. Live in California. I've been in the real estate business for 43 years, was an investment banker for 18 years, and a developer for 25 years. I've developed projects in California, Colorado, Texas, Florida, and in Italy. So I've built in a lot of different places internationally. In California, I built a 33-story high-rise condo tower with retail and office on the bottom floor. I built a government building that I've owned for 18 years. In Colorado, I built the base of Aspen Mountain. I built 45 spec homes and a hotel. In Texas, I bought a 110-year-old bank building, converted it to a hotel. It's currently managed by Marriott. And in Miami, we built the largest project in U.S. history. It's 17 million square feet. It encompassed 10 city blocks. It was very similar to this project where it had a bunch of empty parking lots across the street from American Airlines Arena and a new convention center that we're proposed to build. And we've been in the project for 14 years, and it's costing about $6 billion over that period of time to develop it all out. So that's a little bit about my background. I have other projects, but I figured I don't have a lot of time, so I want to turn it over to Joanne to walk through the project, and to Jay from my team. Thank you.
Good afternoon, trustees, chair. We're very pleased to be here. My name is Joanne Karras, and I want to give you just a 30-second insight to my background, which has been about 43 years in economic development and finance. A good chunk of it has been with the federal, county, and municipal governments. I was at the FDIC for 10 years, and I was an elected county official in unincorporated Los Angeles County, and probably most similar here is deputy mayor for the city of Los Angeles. And my responsibility was economic development, doling out all the money we had to fill gaps in areas that were very challenged or needed something like this, very catalytic. So I am very familiar with both sides of the equation, the public benefits, the private sector requirements. Nothing's really changed other than interest rates, and the economy's gotten a little hinky, but other than that, we're very bullish on Oklahoma, and I am very confident this project, even though the returns are low in the beginning and it's going to be a heavy lift, will be as catalytic to your city and your skyline and your economic benefits as all the other projects I've been involved with throughout the country. I know Jay's going to speak next, but I think the next slide, that's you? Okay, then I'm going to let you do that.
Yes, my name is Jay Fox. I'm a project manager with Hensel Phelps. We were brought in about a year ago to help manage not only the construction side of the coin, but design as well. And you can see the team we already have put together, which is a nice blend of local trade partners, design firms, and some out of state. You can see us as the design builder up there on the top, underneath Madison Capital. We have Cube 3, they're an architect out of Miami. Done a lot of dream hotels, a lot of high residential, similar to the design and the development that Scott's working on. And then below that, you can see the rest of the team. Johnson Associates been really key for us early on, working in that area. And then down there at the bottom, you can see that once construction starts, we want to use local forces as well. So you can see Prism, Streets, Lithco, some of the bigger names here in town.
So this is just a slide with the preview of what we're going to quickly go through and give you an overview. And we love your brick town, so we show it off everywhere. Oh, this is backwards. This is overview summary of what to expect. So as Kenny mentioned, we've got 2 million square feet on 3.9 acres. That's a lot of density, and that's why this is very vertical, and it's also subterranean, which also makes it expensive. The project costs are, at this point, over $736 million, but that does include the hospitality area, the hotel, and some other things. But we're looking at the residential component here. That's our focus. 3 new apartment towers. They'll be around 27 to 28 stories. And currently, if those of you know, the parking lot is used for overflow parking. Not that we have an obligation for any parking, but we are providing exclusive parking to the residents. In addition, we're going to replace, it's about 500 surface parking spaces now. We're looking at 890 public parking. So we're going to add additional parking spaces for what demand we generate as well. You're going to get more dining and entertainment experience to go along with the Bricktown entertainment theme, so it'll be incorporated. The hotel is a upscale lifestyle brand, full service, 348 rooms, which we have figured out from our analysis, you're short on hotel rooms to get that convention center flowing more. So this will help since it's adjacent. We have a workforce development center in addition to workforce housing. The center will be open to the entire community. It is not limited to the residents that are part of the program. Then we have the other amenities that people seem to enjoy with rooftop bars, pools, and we will have a boardwalk, given the name, around the lagoon, which will have active fountain and lighting, digital experience, the thing everybody likes to go to. And a little later, you'll see some inspirational photos of what we want to present to you to say this is going to be a gathering and a destination spot.
I won't spend a ton of time on this slide. I'm sure you guys all know the location based off Kenny's intro. But one thing we'd like to highlight, because it feeds into the inspirational photos and the site design, is that it is the intersection, between basketball, the convention center, Scissortail, and then Bricktown with all the water and things of that nature. But that's the site we talked about earlier. Oop. All right, and here's some massing plans to really see the gravity, the size of them, what it does to the skyline, the arrangement of the buildings. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse as I'm talking here. Can they? So where I'm standing on this top one is at the U-Haul building. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. And here you can see what we're calling towers 1 and 2. So as you hear that terminology later, these are towers 1 and 2, and tower 3 is kind of here in the back. And then this is that hotel we spoke of earlier. In this image, you can see access to the parking, both below for the subterranean that I'm going to cover a little bit later for public parking, and this upper parking, which is for the residents of Tower 1 and 2. So separated parking at that standpoint. You can still see you can access the entire development from this side. So if you're walking around Harkins or anywhere on the south side, you can still access it from here. But this is really the front of the property where you can start seeing all the, the advertising boards, the entertainment boards, the digital experience. The water starts to come into play. So there's a bridge connecting Tower 3 to this hotel. We'll have a pool there, top of a waterfall design aspect as well. And then we two-toned it so you can see it stand out. This green color is the lagoon. So that's where you see the boardwalk and where everything is kind of just circling that lagoon experience. This pill shape right here, left of this hotel. So the hotel is almost like an arrowhead. Left of that, this pill will have not only a restaurant component, but the additional public parking that Joanne discussed. So that is the second structure, if you will. Yep. All right, so inspirational photos. The first one to cue on was the property that Scott mentioned earlier that he's been working on, how much money they put into that area. That's the Miami World Center. But again, you can kind of see the gravity of it, the greenery, all the movement and the action that we're definitely going to pull from that property. The next two are highlighting that digital experience. Again, all that action, that excitement, whether you just left a basketball game or Bricktown or the Dodgers, or you just drove by it and now you want to know what's going on there, right? So there's going to be a lot of movement, a lot of lights, a lot of different colors happening around the buildings and definitely inside that lagoon space. And then this other photo, you can kind of see where we're going visually with the towers, a very modern look, connecting them with a bridge up on top, playing with our rooftop bars, rooftop pools, and things like that. But you can kind of see where that design's heading. There's a lot of detail in this slide. I know you guys and gals have some handouts in front of you. So I'll high level try to touch it. This is 2 levels we're looking at. So I like to focus on this first one. So this is ground level, right? If you're driving on any of the streets, Compress, Reno, what have you, this is ground level. And I'm going to start down here on towers 1 and 2. So towers 1 and 2 do have a shared podium. You saw that shared parking. That shared podium will have entertainment within it. A large square footage of that portion will be within the podium of towers 1 and 2. The access points, there's access and egress off Compress for the public. And then you can see other access up here on the top to get up to those upper levels for the residential towers. When it comes to elevator use, we did create some bypass corridors. If the public's coming up the elevators, they don't need to come through the apartment lobbies, things of that nature. So there are some corridors to delineate that. That covers towers 1 and 2. I'll come down in the basement here in a minute. So tower 3, more retail, more dining. So this dining experience will not only go below, but will be elevated 2 stories and have a rooftop. So you can almost call it 4 levels, if you will. But a large dining experience right there with the boardwalk and the lagoon facing. You can see the lobby of tower number 3, residential. You can see additional retail we've set aside and that digital signage experience. You see this dotted green line if you can. That is that elevator bridge we talked about. So again, people are going to be walking underneath here. It's going to be pretty high up. It needs to be high enough for a fire truck to essentially get through. So you can imagine the height of that bridge. That people will be able to see everything that's going on back here, won't be obstructed. You can also see the drop-off as well for the hotel or, Uber, any of that services. People can get dropped off here and access this. And now we're on this structure. So again, this arrowhead is the hotel itself. They have their own dedicated restaurant in there, again, within the lagoon, their elevator access, their lobby, everything, a little bit of back of house down here at level 1. And then this pill is almost separate, right? So we have the sports bar, restaurant, dining experience right at ground level, right there facing the street. We also have another dedicated area for some quick serve dining that people can access right off the sidewalk. You can see the access points to that parking garage right here via that red arrow. So now that you kind of see the ground level, We're now underground, right? We're now B1. And here you can see, I'm sorry, I need to stop moving my mouse. I'm making little squares there. Here you can see that public parking structure, how it's arranged, how there will be certain entertainment and dining within that sub-level to create that kind of secluded experience, if you will. This will go multiple levels down to reach the parking spaces that I think Joanne just covered on that previous slide and we'll cover later. But the hotel does not require any type of subterranean because the additional public parking will be captured here.
So we did want to stress, importantly, the economic and public benefits. With this size of project, we're looking at least 900 permanent jobs and then 900 temporary. And the temporary are actually construction trades and design, which are great jobs. And we're talking about 2, 3, 4 years. It's going to take a while to build this size or magnitude, and some of it will be in phases because of the housing demand. So you're going to have long-term construction jobs too. As far as the workforce housing, we've got approximately 130 residential units that will be available to those that face economic hardship, that need either a new job, maybe skill sets, but there's something that in their life that could have triggered a problem where they're not sustaining a job. And so the Workforce Center, again, will provide services to them, but it will also be open to anyone in the community that needs a helping hand up, whether it's education or other things we're doing. We've already started partnering with local businesses, so they would train people, and we're going to continue to grow that list. But over the 25 years of the TIF, we expect 7,000 people to be able to retain jobs or get reemployed. They're likely to be unemployed or underemployed. So that's a lot of people getting more sustainable lifestyle. We have a smart growth design, and we've been sensitive also to the area, which is why we're trying to tie in the boardwalk and the lagoon to the other water features that the city's already developed. But we are going to be environmentally green. We see this as a strong transit site, multimodal. So we want to take advantage of that, and the walkability within the site and adjacent other venues that you already have in the neighborhood. We're going to really work on those EV charging stations, and we're providing infill housing, so usually that means less commute, and again, all the structure you have there. So reduces the carbon footprint that we're all, I guess, a little hot about, seeming everyone's breaking records this couple of weeks. So anything we can do to help, we're trying. Then you see additional public parking. So the one structure, the larger one, which will be the subterranean, and the more expensive one, will have about 636 units, which more than replaces the current 500. And then another one, which will be closer to the hospitality component for 254, but that's above grade. So 890 public spaces. We're also, as you saw in the inspirational photos, we're looking at an immersive digital experience, more indoor entertainment venues, and some additional dining that I'm sure you'll find interesting. Most, if not all, of our operators are going to be from outside the area. These will be new to Oklahoma City. So we're not moving someone or repeating something that you already have. And then from the public revenue side, over the 25 years, the proposal provides the reimbursement after we pay our property tax of 90%, but that means you keep 10%. So that's about $25 million more, because right now the site is generating zero. And the other taxes will be coming in sales tax and hotel tax. So in your 25 years, because we're not getting any of the operating sales tax, we're only looking at the construction material sales tax, you'll be receiving tax, not reimbursing back $85 million. And then I think next slide is, do I go the right way here? No, I went the wrong way again. Okay. This slide tries to show you visually our phases. And the main driver on the phases really is the ability to absorb that many residential units. It's a lot of units over time. And that's one thing that we're tracking carefully with one of the buildings here. So we have, we're hoping we can build faster, but realistically, you're seeing the first phase commence next summer. It takes about 2 years to build these, and that would be one residential tower, some of the commercial space, and first things first, the replacement of the public parking, the larger structure. Now, the hospitality section and the other parking, that can go anytime. That could be also a year from now. Completely separate asset, not part of the project here that we're looking to support in any TIF. Then the second tower, we're hoping, is a year behind because we're going to perform really great on the first tower and get it rented. And then the third tower, a year behind that. And each one comes with some additional commercial. And then we have our public parking structure. The second one, which again could be in a prior phase. It'll depend on when the hospitality goes. Oh, I keep going the wrong way. Okay. So now we have a summary of our sources and uses, and the reason this number is different than the $736 million for total project costs is this is the project components, or these are the costs of the project components only going to receive TIF. So it's predominantly all the residential that needs it and the parking structure. That's where, if not all the money, that's where it's going to go. That's a summary of where the money's going to come from and be allocated to. We have a summary cash flow to show you predominantly how low the returns are. Obviously, we're going to have reserves in the first year, you always do. But when you look at the returns in the beginning, they're very low. But we are very bullish that this is going to be as successful as every other city that has ventured into similar projects. And they have started slow, some have gone down, up, but ultimately they're very successful. Okay, I keep going backwards. This is just a more visual to capture. Again, this is not the entire project. We are in a opportunity zone, so a 10-year hold is more than likely because most of the people here are going to want the tax benefits, the income tax benefits. But that's our assumption that the investors will do that. The cost for the portion that is receiving TIF is allocated here, and you see our gross profit, return on cash, and IRR again, which are very low. This is upon stabilization, not the life of the project. I think that's it. So we're here for questions.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Joanne, have y'all determined what kind of square footage for the residential units, the range being square footage? That's the first part. And knowing that you have come solely for the residential component of this and not the hotel, when would the hotel, what phase period would it potentially be part of the equation? Phase
Okay,
1,
so
2, or 3?
Yeah, I'll answer you backwards. The hotel could start a year from now. It's a little harder to get financed in this environment. Well, it's harder to get anything financed in this environment with the rates. And if you saw the sources and uses, a big chunk is the cost of money. However, we're working with agency money, so a little less expensive. And the hotel will not. It'll have to be private debt and equity. So that could be, though, a year from now. That could happen sooner than the other phases. The units are anywhere from 700 or 800 square feet on the studio, they're to the one bedroom, but they're pretty generous. Their 2 bedrooms can go as high as 1,200 square feet. So it's a generous infill or urban. I mean, it may not be the same for suburban, but that's a nice square footage, 2 bedroom, 2 bath on the 2 bedroom, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and then the studio with 1 bath.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for your presentation. I have a few questions. So on the design front, I'm interested in knowing more about this Workforce Development Center. What informed that component being, or Workforce Training Center, who or what informed that being included? And on the operations side, who would you work with locally to actually offer services? Would you be working with a local university, a career tech? To be honest, it just feels a little bit out of place, and so I just want more context there.
Yes, thank you for your question. It does appear out of place. I can understand why you're saying that, but it's also one of our biggest challenges nationally to get people back to work that have issues and challenges, but housing that's affordable, not necessarily affordable housing, like we're not doing tax credits. Scott understands that, so he's also being very philanthropic. I did ask from the nonprofit that I am on the board to find a spot for people who need a hand up.
Okay.
And so this is for those, they may not have a job at all and they can't pay rent. So if you enter the program voluntarily and you do the work, it's a 2-year program. You will live on site. We will team you up with, the right people to assess your skills. And what training, you might just need a GED. You might want to become entrepreneurial because now you could work from home and do technology, right? But we do have, for example, Hensel Phelps has committed to construction apprenticeships and everything on site. So that's just one of companies we're talking with, and they are local. They're national, but I mean, they have an office here. We are going to team up with other nonprofits. In fact, tomorrow I have a meeting with one here locally. We're not going to do this just from out of state. However, the nonprofit I'm involved with has local, if you will, licensed operators that are doing things, and including some medical scan, like brain scans, again, to help people understand where their weaknesses are and what they need to do to sustain a job, and then be able to pay their own rent, move on. So those are kind of examples, but it will be a local collaboration, and we're reaching out to everyone. In fact, I think, Randy, today you had met someone. So we are going to reach out, and if you have suggestions that you would like us to reach out to, we're absolutely wanting to be all-inclusive and part of the community.
Okay, no, that's great to hear. I was curious because there's a heck of a lot of need when it comes to workforce development and things like that. Just thinking about all of the providers in that space, especially the providers that are either located downtown from our universities. You have UCO that's downtown, to nonprofits or for-profit providers, Public Strategies. You have other entities that have been in that space that are local and are either in downtown or near downtown. I would encourage you all to do maybe like a landscape review, just to see what's currently happening, because I know even some of those folks that have a local footprint are having challenges because the folks that are most in need of that sort of training don't live downtown. And that actually takes me to the next point of, when we talk about workforce housing, are we talking about for those that are 80 to 20% AMI, or how are you all defining that?
Typically, it's an economic hardship assessment, and it's going to depend on different programs that we use. So there's one program we use routinely, and the state does the assessment under Sooner Care. So if we use that program, we don't have to do the assessment, but they refer. There are, like you said, local groups where we are, right now, we're predominantly based in Phoenix Metro. They call us all the time, and the reasons for the need are different. And it could be, domestic violence, so you've got someone that has to leave and now doesn't have the breadwinner. It's, the situations, and providing the housing downtown for us made sense. And again, there's no obligation to do this. This is Scott volunteering and me begging
Yeah.
because of our mission. The downtown has so many opportunities for jobs, and the transit that's there, you don't need a car, so it reduces your cost of living. And by us helping with the rent and providing the housing and all the life skills support, we expect, a 90% success. I mean, there's going to be people who fall off the program or walk away and don't want to do the work. But anyone who's willing to do the work and get back on their feet, we're here to help. And with, like you said, everybody, we're going to reach out to everybody as a resource.
Okay. Well, and just for clarification, typically when we're talking about like workforce housing, we're backing into what can that, if it's 80%, 60%, 80, 20% AMI.
Of the AMI?
Yeah,
Okay.
what can they afford? And so when I was looking at the 1,800 approximately dedicated towards workforce housing, my point of clarification is, will the nonprofit be paying, because that's above fair market, it may be even market rate. The nonprofit would be paying the 1,800, but the actual rate for the tenant would be below that amount, or would it be at that amount?
Yeah, so the actual rate for the resident that has the need could be zero,
Okay,
okay? But there will be a source of income.
okay,
Those buildings have to pay, they don't pay for themselves, right? So there will be a source of income going to, towards rent. But the
Okay.
1,800, so you know where that came from, it's 120% of AMI according to HUD for this area.
Got it.
I was very surprised at your average household income. It's actually very high for this boundary when I saw it, but that's not our number. So all that shows is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath maximum rent that
It's that
someone would
amount.
pay, and it could be, a household income to
two people.
two people working, that's the max they would pay.
Okay.
But coming in, if they can't pay anything, they're gonna pay zero.
Got it, got it.
And
So
the nonprofit
would
will-
be obligated
Right,
to
and
pay
the
that
nonprofit will handle
amount.
the arrangements financially with the master developer, Scott.
Gotcha. And then my last two questions, on the, specific to the financing, and I guess this is more so a question for Kenny. I haven't heard about CPACE in a while. What's the sort of status of that program? Would that be applicable here? Is that being leveraged?
Yeah, that's something we've been having some discussions on, and we haven't talked about it because we don't have any certainty on that.
Okay.
Now, I'll tell you, like, for example, I believe we just closed on the largest CPACE we've ever done with the Convergence project.
Okay.
And, they probably did, I'm probably gonna get it wrong, but I think it was north of 20 million of that project was CPACE.
Wow.
So that's a possibility here, and that's
Okay.
something we'll explore as part of the capital stack.
Okay.
I would say they're exploring all
All of the
options, from
options.
HUD financing to funds to investors.
Tax exempt
to-
bonds, yeah.
I mean, they're looking at all options, and that's something we're trying to put together.
Okay. And then my last question, because I've taken up too much time. On the financing piece, if we're exploring, and I know I'm jumping ahead with you, Kenny, on the waterfall concept, would we come in first, second, or what would our position be? Just from a,
Well-
collateral risk perspective?
Yeah, no, I would say this is something, again, remember this is a pay-in, pay-out TIF, but what we were looking at would be something, typically what we try to do is make sure, and you've seen the returns are pretty, even with the help, very meager,
Can we
probably.
go back to that?
It's
went
like a 3% cash on cash, and they're projecting, if they looked out 10 years, maybe they get to a 15% IRR, which is very, in this market, below market.
Got it.
But again, they're really bullish on the city, and what we would look at, again, this is being negotiated, but I think one of the things we're using as a sort of tool for that is something similar to what we did with the Skirvin, where it's like you get debt paid, you get equity returned, and then there's some formula that splits up sort of the returns between the city and the developer, and et cetera. But those are all things that have to be negotiated. We're
Okay.
working through those right now with the group and working through them with the city manager. And so those are all points those are the finer deal points we bring back to you in the EDA. You know, if this is approved by this board and council approves the allocation, that would be part of the economic development agreement. Trust me, we'll do a whole presentation and briefing with you on that
Okay,
going forward.
okay, thank you.
Scott, Joanne, Jay, nice to meet you. Welcome to Oklahoma City. Great presentation. Todd, last week I had the opportunity to talk to Scott and Joanne on the phone, and they answered a lot of questions for me. And I think the one thing I walked away with thinking was these guys are great at communicating, and I think that's the key to a successful project, that they have to be able to communicate with us, and we have to be able to communicate with them. And I felt really comfortable after that phone call. So I look forward to working with you all. Please contact me anytime. I'll try and help any way I can. Thank you.
There it is. Thank you for the presentation. It's very exciting to see this type of project and size here in the city. Similar to what was mentioned already, I think it's something that the more we understand, the better it is for us to make sure all the components are there. And when we talk about the workforce housing part, that's just a tenant separate from the project, correct? I mean, that's still, the project itself is one thing, but that's the workforce housing portion of it is just a tenant that would be part of that, right? So it's a little bit separate from, it's not, in a sense, together, right? So they're going to be in control of what happens with that project. Am I correct?
The intent here, I think it goes back to Trustee Adams' comment, is to be all-inclusive. And you know, normally you kind of send people off to places that are not as, I'll be honest, desirable. I've been doing this a long time. And so this is an all-inclusive project in a very dynamic, environment. But it also has all the components to make the workforce work and get people back to work and help people. So while it is a part of the project, it's a version that we thought should be noted because of the help we're giving to those that could never afford to live here otherwise.
So the commitment from them to be a tenant is partially on if the project goes through?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where I was leaning on, that
yeah.
I know it's a little bit separate, that you can only control what's within the project, and then, they're a tenant. But I appreciate all the details. Thank you so much.
All right, if we have no further comments or questions, we can take a motion on the item. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And the item passes. Thank you all very much for your presentation. All right, brings us to item 4E, Alliance for Economic Development of Oklahoma City's Fiscal Year 2023 Third Quarter Report. Mr. Sudol.
Well, I know we've had a long meeting today, so I won't belabor. The report's in there, just maybe a couple of highlights. There's a lot of information. The Alliance continues to administer the city's ARPA, Small Business and Nonprofit Assistance Program, so made a lot of good progress in helping small businesses with facade, technical assistance, also have several of our business accelerators off and running. It's not in this report because it's a little behind because it's the third quarter, but also we have just gotten ready to launch our small business minority supplier program in concert with Urban League and the Chamber. So excited to kind of bring more to you maybe in the next quarter's report about that program. A couple of the major projects that we've, just to provide updates on, we've closed on all the financing and incentives with and also the Innovation Hall piece on the Convergence project. So I know that project had gotten started and was moving ahead, but there were still other pieces related to the city's MAPS project, Innovation Hall. So that project is off and running fully. I think if you've driven over there, you see they've got all the underground work and they're actually going vertical. The other one, just would mention, we also closed and had the groundbreaking on Pratt Whitney's new 250,000 square foot facility there at 240 and Air Depot. And so that's an exciting project. If you drive down there, they did not waste any time. They were moving dirt and going. And then also down on that side, part of, we've had several items recently about our 577 projects. I'm happy to report we've actually closed on the first sale for Lock Supply down there, a little under 30 acres. So I have a check. I believe we delivered it today to the city treasurer to return some of your money to you. So that project's off and running, and there's many improvements going on down there. And then last thing I'll probably mention, just continue working with Tinker Air Force Base and Air Force officials working on the expansion of that east across Douglas. One of the entities the Alliance manages, the Oklahoma Industries Authority, owns the property east of there, so we're continuing to work with them about working on the purchase of that from OIA so that they can expand for the new B-21 bomber campus. So that's also, as you recall, in concert with the city, has a $35 million ARPA project to move a major water line there from Douglas to Post Road. So those are some of the highlights. There's a lot of other stuff there. In the interest of time, if you have other questions, please reach out. Happy to provide any more information on it.
Kenny, I just wanted to comment really quickly on the areas where you've been working with community to try to build more certification assistance and teaching. I know there's more conversations around that as we continue to grow, and in our city, the development, the projects are endless right now. So being able to support small businesses to get into the field of knowing how to do citywide projects and getting them into those, because there's a lot of opportunities, but knowing and taking them through the process to working with contractors that are getting these larger projects is going to be really beneficial. And I see all the work that's being done to continue that and leverage that. So I appreciate that in there. Thank you.
I believe it, probably my dates from, I think it launched in the last week, that program. That's that minority supplier program we talked about. So my team will get mad at me that I can't remember the exact date, but it was this past week. So
Thank you.
They're always mad at you. Any other comments or questions there? If not, we can take a motion to receive. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And the item passes. Brings us to item 5 on the agenda, the General Manager's Report. Ms. McSpadden. Any questions no? I think we're good. All right, do we have any comments from staff? Trustees?
I do have a quick question. On the debt that the trust is obligated to pay, do we know, are those fixed rates? Are they variable?
I believe all of them are fixed rates. Let me think. Yes. At First National, I believe it's a fixed rate.
Okay.
We'll get that information. I do know the Devon TIF, Project 180 debt is fixed rate. The downtown is fixed rate. The convention centers, they're all fixed rate
Okay.
deals. We'll verify on the First National.
Okay.
That
Thank
one's
you.
a private placement, so we'll get the details. And provide
Okay,
it.
thank you.
All right, do we have any citizens that have signed up to speak? Nope. If not, that brings us to item 7. We are adjourned. All right, I got